Why does a narcissist seem so charming to outsiders, yet so cruel to those closest to them? If you've ever lived with one, you've probably noticed it. In public, the narcissist is attentive, brilliant, even seductive. But at home, with their partner, family, or inner circle, they become hurtful and dismissive, almost as if they enjoy stepping all over you. And then you wonder, why do they show their best self to everyone else and their worst to me? What is it about me, or about how I behave, that makes them feel they can treat me this way? Today, you'll discover what you can do to make a narcissist respect you, even when it seems like they don't want to. And no, this isn't about intuition or manipulation. Neuroscience explains why their brain reacts one way with some people and differently with others, and how you can change the way they perceive you. In this video, you'll learn what happens in their mind when they feel they have power over you, why they reserve their respect for those who set clear boundaries, and how you can take back control of the relationship without losing your dignity or your calm. Welcome, neurocurious minds. Let's begin by exploring, through the lens of neuroscience, why a narcissist doesn't respect easily. To understand why a narcissist struggles to respect others, you first need to understand how their mind works. A narcissist doesn't feel empathy the way most people do. It's not that they can't recognize someone else's pain, it's that they don't experience it as their own. In their brain, the areas responsible for effective empathy, the ones that allow us to emotionally connect to others, tend to be less active. That's why it's so hard for them to put themselves in your shoes or consider your feelings as valid. On top of that, a narcissist doesn't see relationships as connections between equals. For them, everything is a hierarchy. Someone is always on top and someone is always beneath. And their goal is to make sure they're never the one at the bottom. So, when they interact with you, they instinctively try to position you below them. It becomes a psychological game where they test your resistance, push your limits, and see how far they can go before you push back. If you give in to their tests, if you tolerate their put-downs without reacting or setting boundaries, their brain interprets it as permission to keep dominating. But when someone stands firm and shows clarity, something in their perception shifts. Because to a narcissist, respect doesn't come from affection or kindness. It comes from sensing that the other person refuses to be their stepping stone. And that's why the way you position yourself with them is more powerful than you might think. If, for a narcissist, respect doesn't come from love, but from seeing you as someone who won't be walked on, what happens in their brain when they try to dominate you? When a narcissist senses that someone might challenge their ego, their brain reacts as if facing a real threat. The amygdala, that little region that detects danger, fires intensely, triggering a disproportionate emotional response. This hyperreactivity explains why they can become aggressive, cold, or cruel at the slightest sign of what they perceive as an injury to their self-esteem. At the same time, their reward system kicks in. Every time they succeed in asserting themselves or receive validation, when someone gives in, praises them, or avoids confrontation, their brain releases dopamine. That chemical rush reinforces their behavior and drives them to seek it out again and again, creating an almost addictive need to feel superior. And that's how they start classifying the people around them, not as equals, but as either resources or threats. Those who submit become resources to inflate their ego. Those who stand firm are perceived as a challenge. But here's the key. Even though their brain reacts with hostility to a challenge, they also respect those who refuse to be subdued. Because to them, their true equals are the ones who can hold their ground without fear. If narcissists react with hostility when challenged, why are there people they end up respecting? The answer lies in what their brain perceives as value. For a narcissist, respect doesn't come from compassion. It comes from recognizing that the other person has something they'd lose if they tried to crush them. That perception of value isn't always about money or status. It's about self-assurance, the ability to stand firm without falling into fear or submission. When someone stays calm, speaks clearly, and doesn't overreact to provocations, it triggers a very different response in the narcissist's brain. That person no longer seems like an easy target, but rather someone with clear boundaries, someone who's not available to be controlled. This is where the key difference between submission and assertive firmness comes in. Submission tells the narcissist they have permission to invade and dominate, while assertive firmness, that mix of clarity, calm, and dignity, sends the exact opposite message. You have no power here. And when the narcissist senses they can't win against you easily, even if it bruises their ego at first, their brain learns that with you, their usual game won't work. And in their language, that is respect. If you earn a narcissist's respect by showing firmness and clarity, how can you actually put that into practice in your daily life? Here are some concrete strategies backed by psychology and neuroscience to change how they see you and make them respect you without falling into their game. First, set clear boundaries and stick to them. It's not enough to say, "That's it." You have to show it with actions. If you say you won't tolerate certain behavior, make sure you act accordingly every time it happens. Their brain takes you seriously when it sees your words and actions align. Second, don't react emotionally. When they see you lose control, it's a win for them. Practice being unshakable. Breathe, pause for a few seconds before responding, and keep your tone neutral. This shuts down their game because they don't get the reaction they crave. Your reaction is their fuel. Third, use assertive communication. Speak with clear, short sentences and avoid over-explaining yourself. For example, "I don't agree with that," or "I'm not going to engage in this conversation." Clarity unsettles the narcissist, but also forces them to adjust their behavior with you. And finally, don't beg for validation or play into their narrative. You don't need to convince them you're valuable or defend yourself from every jab. When you stay centered and refuse to buy into their story, their game loses power. These strategies not only protect you, they also send a clear message. Here is someone who knows who they are and refuses to be manipulated. But if you already know what to do to earn their respect, it's just as important to know what not to do. Because many fall into mistakes that only feed the narcissist's game. One of the most common mistakes is trying to beat them at their own game. Competing with them in arrogance, sarcasm, or manipulation only reinforces their power dynamic. In their mind, this doesn't make you their equal. It just makes you another player in their game, and one who will inevitably lose because they've been training for this all their life. Another mistake is showing fear or excessive compliance. When they sense you need their approval, that you fear their disapproval, or that you'll do anything to avoid conflict, they interpret it as permission to dominate you even more. And finally, overreacting to their provocations, yelling, crying, begging, over-explaining. All of it gives them exactly what they want: control over your emotions. To their brain, every outburst from you is proof that they're in charge. Avoiding these mistakes is just as important as applying the right strategies, because every time you fall into them, you're training their mind to keep seeing you as beneath them in their hierarchy. If every mistake you make only reinforces their sense of superiority, you might wonder, what made them this way? Why does someone feel the need to constantly step on others just to feel valid? Behind narcissistic behavior, there are often deep and invisible wounds. Psychology has shown that in many cases, a narcissist is shaped in environments where there was abandonment, humiliation, or impossible expectations to meet. As a child, they may have learned that their worth depended on performing, standing out, being perfect, or on the contrary, that to even be seen, they had to hide their vulnerabilities and always appear strong. That grandiose mask you see today is often just armor covering a deep fear of rejection and insignificance. Emotionally, their self-esteem isn't built on true inner security, but on constant comparison and a need for external validation. That's why they feel better about themselves only when they perceive others as being below them. Even at a neurobiological level, some studies suggest that the brain circuits responsible for empathy and emotional regulation function differently in people with narcissistic traits, making it harder for them to emotionally connect and handle frustration. In short, nothing justifies the harm they cause, but understanding that their behavior stems from emotional wounds and deficiencies can help you not take their attacks personally and reaffirm your boundaries without hatred, but with firmness. And now that you know why they are the way they are, how they operate, and what you can do to earn their respect, here's one final reflection. A narcissist won't change just because you want them to. Their respect doesn't come from love or compassion or from finally realizing what they're doing. Their respect comes when they realize they can't dominate you. That's why, beyond learning to handle them, this is also an act of self-love. When you choose not to play their game, not to react the way they expect, and to hold your boundaries, you're not just teaching them to respect you. You're teaching yourself that you deserve it. Remember, you don't need to yell or get revenge or convince them of anything. All it takes is keeping your calm, your clarity, and your dignity intact, which can be challenging, and that's why asking for help is always a wise and powerful choice. If this video helped you understand something your curious mind already suspected, share it, because knowledge transforms, heals, frees, and sometimes even saves. See you in the next video, Neuro-Curious Minds.